Thank you so much. Out in 5th place.
So we are four-handed and courageous just for Wojciech to go and talk to Kara there, I think.
So Antonio, give me again the all-in shove, main event final table. With the amount of chips he had, it's such a tough, he's got a lot of heart. It's such a tough move to make because you know there's a chance that you're wrong and you're gone.
Right, but you're only getting called by monsters most of the time.
Okay.
Right? If his opponent had a hand like King Queen, is he going to put his whole tournament on the line there with a call?
No, he's not. You're correct.
So how often does he really have a set?
And look what we have developing here. Win open raise to 2.3 million. With Queen Trey off, Josephine in the small blind, then repopped it to 7 million with Ace 5 off. Now we're playing poker.
That is poker. You can't call with Ace 5, right? That hand doesn't play very well after the flop, and so his only option is to re-raise, take control, take lead, or fold. And I love that Josephine re-raised here.
So Cliff Josephine with now 85.1 million, our chip leader right there. Gordon Vail, born in Connecticut, grew up in Illinois, now lives in San Francisco.
And he has traveled the world. He traveled the world at a very young age because he decided to go to Europe to play when he could play at the age of 18. When he was over in Europe, actually, he did great for a while, and then it all came crashing down over a couple of months. He lost nearly $1 million and had to come home, rebuild, reload, and retool. Came home to Illinois and eventually moved to San Francisco.
Next payout is over $2.5 million. How far we have come from the $1 million they all received back in July for finishing in 9th place at least. Josephine raised again, this time with a little better ace, Ace 7 off. Veo's in the big blind with the biggest stack.
So far, we've seen Veo play very selective, very careful, and a bit on the tighter side. He folded 7s and Ace 10 in spots yesterday where I thought it was pretty close, but would definitely lean more towards the call. Now that he is the chip lead and we're playing four-handed, I guarantee we're going to see a lot more action from Veo.
And there's a tray for Veo with his King Trey.
Check.
He checks it.
So Veo doesn't hate this flop. He's flopped a pair, and he also has runner for the King High flush.
Veo still good.
Check.
Checks bottom pair again. Josephine checks back.
There's not a lot of value in betting because you're only getting called by a better hand most of the time. And so really you just want to go to a check kind of situation and hope that your bottom pair is good.
Cliff's not going to get crazy, and his ace high is no good.
Nice hand. Sorry, I didn't know put the king first.
No, I know it's not intentional. Just don't do it in a big pot.
That one, I would be a little more careful in a big one.
These two have some history, Norman?
Yes, they've done business in the past. When Gordon Vail was underage, he contacted Cliff Josephine. Got backed online by Cliff Josephine. Cliff did not know he was underaged. And now makes sure that anybody he does back is of age.
And Cliff says his backing business is not done.
But it's not good anymore.
It's not good anymore, you're right.
I don't know, Antonio, most people lose at tournament poker. So if you're backing people in tournament poker, it seems to me that most of the time you're going to lose, but Cliff maybe found a way to win for a while.
But at the time, when, during the peak of his backing, the players were still pretty bad. These days, everybody, well, except for you, has gotten drastically better. And so, you are the only rule to the exception, Norman Chad. If there was 100 Norman Chads in a poker tournament, I guarantee he would back every single player on earth to play against.
That was 3 body punches in less than 20 words.
Well,
and it might be the last time I asked you a question this calendar year.
It was a lot of buildup.
And the backing is not unlike, I mean, he comes from Wall Street. He was a stockbroker, but it's not unlike venture firms you would have in the West Coast out there by, Silicon Valley, where you're betting on lots and lots of companies, hoping that one comes through big.
Sure.
When Cliff had 2 big wins, as you mentioned last night with Elon Schwartz and Joe Cadden.
And when you're a backer like him, he said it was like being a stock guy. You look at somebody's balance sheet at companies, decide whether you want to back them, and he looks at people's resumes and how well they play poker and decides if he wants to back them.
So here we have Ruan opening for 2.3 million with Jack 8 suited, and win with a re-raise with the pocket 10s. And Ruan will fold.
So how did Michael Ruan make it through the whole main event and yesterday without sunglasses, and now all of a sudden they emerge today? What the heck?
His hair was getting in his eye. He needs a shield.
Protection, huh?
I can't get over the hair.
So Wynn now stacking 98 million chips. Gordon Vail still our chip leader with over 111 million. You can follow along up top. Josephy with 82 million, Ruan with 44 million. We started tonight with over an hour and a half left in this level at 500,000, 1 million with a 150K ante. Now, Gordon Vail, chip leader of the 47th World Series of Poker main event. Pocket sixes. We've seen one chip leader get a little crazy with sixes. Wynn now dominated here with pocket fours.
The same two players who had the pocket sixes and pocket eights earlier when Vail made his big move. I mean, it was Ruan with, with pocket eights. So this time Wynn crushed by Vail.
And there's a call from Qui Wynn. I can't help that hat. I'm sorry. Every time I look at him, it goes right to the hat. Goes right to, maybe that's what he wants.
I wish he'd take it off, because if he takes off the hat and the sunglasses, he's such a delightful person to be around, and you want to be around him. He looks like something different, though, that raccoon and those shades.
It's a pretty interesting spot. I mean, Josephy's woken up with a pretty good hand. A very good hand.
Josephy
so
repops it now with ace queen off. He says 9 million, boys.
Yeah, and this should do the job. Vail doesn't want to give up his chip lead. He loves where he's at this final table. He does have pocket sixes. If he flops a set, he could win a massive pot. But the problem is the raise is pretty hefty. But he does have position, so I don't know. I like to see flops with these hands. And also, I could have the best hand going into the flop, so I'd probably call.
Does the fact that you flopped a set recently change your idea?
And Wynn is the kind of player that could call here and see a flop, but I think that out of position, fours you to kind of hit it or you don't to proceed after the flop anyway. So,
did he say all in?
No, he couldn't have.
Yes, he did.
Oh my gosh.
And Cliff has to give up the ace queen, reminiscent to hand number 1.
Wow, that is a courageous play. I would never make a play like that just because I called the small blind, so my hand looks pretty weak. I mean, the way he played his hand, he had to have a small pair, maybe 6, 7s, 8s. There's no way he had a big hand in that spot.
That's hand queen.
Thank you.
Wow. But it's very tough for Josephy to call that.
Absolutely. And Cliff wasted no time.
Yeah, if you feel like flipping, and you know your ace queen is probably good, and in that spot it probably was. I'm not saying you should call. I'm just saying that was very courageous. I did not expect to see that coming from Wynn.
Four-handed now at the 2016 World Series of Poker main event championship table. On McCarron along with Norman Chad, Antonio Esfandiari, and Kara Scott. And we hope you are enjoying the action. These players, when we were 9-handed, did not disappoint. They're not disappointing us now 4-handed. We'll be on the air tonight until at least we have 3 players left. But things have shifted dramatically. Qui Wynn right there in that beautiful hat is once again our chip leader. Cliff Josephy started 9-handed as the chip leader. He's in 3rd place with 73 million. Gordon Vail with over 108 million in 2nd place, and Michael Ruan in 4th place with 44 million. So it has been quite a shuffling of the deck and of the chip stacks so far tonight.
And we are left here 4-handed with the 2 oldest players of this November 9 and the 2 youngest. Qui Wynn 39, Cliff Josephy 50, the old guys, and then the 2 20-somethings, Michael Ruan and Gordon Vail, 27 and 28.
Who win? Wynn raises with 10-7 on the button, and he will take it. We win with a very supportive crowd here. Lives in Las Vegas, so none of his crowd had too far to go to come support him here at the Penn and Teller Theater. And you see what's happened so far. Wynn has retaken the chip lead that he gathered last night late. Ruan is the short stack, but still 43 big blinds, and in
sharp
stunning
hands, Jack.
fashion,
Too busy piling up your
Ruzicka
chips.
is out. Win. 10-9 of clubs.
I thought you do it. That's why I connected to
Did he
it.
just fold 10-9 of clubs in
He
the
did.
cutoff? Did I
Yeah.
see that correctly?
You saw that correctly.
And Vail gets a walk in the big blind.
Well, I wouldn't have folded 10-9 of clubs in the cutoff there. But, you know, sometimes you got to go with your feeling.
So,
It's a baccarat thing.
well, Win has been unpredictable, and that's what you want to be,
but,
right?
But 9-10 of clubs has too much value, and you're in the cutoff. You have the chip lead. I mean, there's just really no reason to fold. I would definitely bring it in for an open. At a minimum, try and win the antes and blinds out there. And if not, I have a pretty good hand that can take a flop.
So we continue dealing four-handed here in the Penn and Teller Theater. The crowd all around these players and in the seats. Each of the players with a contingent, or rail, as they say in poker, behind them, all with matching shirts, more likely than not. Josephy raises 2.4 million, ace-jack suited. Moran with the glasses does look like more of a rock star now.
All of a sudden, you know, when I go to raves, every other person I see is Michael Ruan.
Vail with king, queen in the small blind. So he has already committed $500,000 chips. Gordon, he's going to be here with Josephy, but on what level here? He's got a lot of the yellow chips with $1 million each.
I expected to see more, you know, Vail playing a lot more active. Certainly with his stack size, he will be.
Re-raised to 8.1 million back to Josephy. Win folded 8-5.
You know, if I'm sitting in Josephy's seat, I am always going to call in position here and see a flop.
Josephy started the hand with 72.5 million. Vail almost 108 million. There is the call. The pot 17.8 million. Josephy with the shorter stack, but the better hand right now pre-flop. And king 10 jack. So Josephy with the jacks, but Vail flops top pair.
Top pair
No,
and a
when are you
straight
doing
draw.
the
This is
straight
an
draw?
action flop for both players. Josephy can catch a queen to make the nut straight. Vail has top pair with a straight draw. He needs an ace or a 9.
Vail first to act.
I think betting or checking is fine. There's a lot of money in the pot. You know, if I'm in this spot with king queen, I flop top pair. I'm totally happy to check call, but I also don't mind leading, and you know, which is what I'm doing with a lot of my bluffs as well.
But doesn't that flop scare both players, or they love them and they hate it
I
at
mean,
the same time?
if Vail could take that flop or a new random flop, he'll take that flop all day. He has 8 outs to make a straight. He's flopped top pair with a very good kicker.
And what about the bet sizing here? Vail re-raised pre-flop to over 8 million. Now his flop bet is just under 5 million. What does that tell you?
Right. Well, it's almost always better to bet something versus check and show weakness. And so, you know, it looks like maybe he's trying to induce Josephy into coming along.
There is and an ace for Vail.
The plot thickens.
So there's Vail's fiancée, Kate. And what a card to come. Josephy with aces up, but the straight for Gordon Vail.
If I'm in Vail's seat, I'm probably going to lead again, because really the only hand that I would lead again is with a queen in my hand. All other hands, I'm probably going to check. Right? If I had pocket aces, kings, jacks, tens, ace, king, I'm almost always going to check the turn here. And so I'm going to bet my queen, trying to make it look like a bluff, because the only hand I should be betting is a queen. And realistically, what are the chances that I have a queen in my hand? So really the only hand I'm repping by betting here is ace queen, pocket queens, or king queen.
And is there any way Josephy can get away from this after he bets it?
I think Josephy has to call in position here. A, he has an ace or a jack to fill up. And B, he very well could have the best hand. If he calls here, it's very hard for his opponent to give him a third barrel bluff on the river.
10.1.
So I think it's going to be pretty standard bet call.
What a moment for Cliff Josephy, as he finds himself in severe trouble here and facing a bet of 10.1 million. And you see the chips behind, 59.5 million for Cliff. Aces and jacks, and second best. Just going over all the hands he's seen Veo play. Veo in the small blind in this hand. Re-raised pre-flop.
I will be shocked to see a fold. Dun 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 dun.
A little shift in his seat. Gordon or Josephy not comfortable.
And just for people watching at home, there is only call or fold, and I think he's much more likely to call. He's never going to raise here with two pair, just because if his opponent has a queen, he's put himself in probably the worst kind of situation possible. And so it's either call, maybe fold if you have a stone cold read on your opponent, but personally I call.
But he knows there's a chance that Veo could have had pocket queens or ace queen.
Of course, but there's also a chance he could have had 7-8 of hearts, and he's trying to rep the queen here on the turn.
You saw the clock. That's how long Cliff has been thinking about it, and he does put in 10.1 million, and he needs ace or jack of queen chops. Deuce of diamonds.
Well, that doesn't change a whole lot.
It changes nothing.
So I think Veo has to bet here, just because the story he's been telling, he has to continue with it. And again, he's only betting a hand with a queen in it or a stone cold bluff.
And then once again, it will be up to Cliff Josephy.
Right, Josephy has watched Veo play his hands for the last 2 days now, and he knows that Veo doesn't really get out of line. So if he bets again here, it's a very tough spot. Very tough spot for Josephy.
Bet sizing will be important to get a call.
Right, there's 47 million chips out there. How much do you want to bet? You want to get called, but at the same time, you don't want to give away your hand.
And he's going with all red and one yellow. Into 47 million. Veo bets 14.7.
Yeah, this looks very suspicious. It almost looks like Veo wants to call.
He bet well less than 1/3 of the pot, screaming for a call.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm bluffing in Veo's shoes, I'd probably bet a little bit more, just to maybe make it a little bit more scared for my opponent. And look, we've seen Cliff Josephy make some great laydowns leading up to this final table. And so if I had to put my money, I would put it on the side of him being able to get away from it. This is a pretty hard call on the river. Again, the most important thing to realize is Veo is only betting a queen.
Look at that. A fold on the river from Cliff Josephy with two pair. And fiancée Kate loves what she sees. Gordon Veo extending his chip lead at this championship table. He now over 134 million. What a fortuitous fall of the cards for Veo. And it could have been a lot worse for Cliff Josephy, but he knows the fold was the right thing to do. But Josephy drops down to below 50 million, and his workload just got a lot heavier. He is our dominating chip leader right now. Vegas is big on Halloween. Veo, not so much.
Yeah, I'm not really a Halloween guy. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a little bit of a Grinch kind of with a lot of different holidays, but it's just, I don't know. I like watching it from afar, but yeah, I think, Vegas will be a really awesome place to be during Halloween. I've never been here during Halloween, so that'll be really fun, I think. But I can't imagine, rocking a costume of or anything like that.
And I wish the folks could see it. Norman, I love the outfit you've changed into after our on-camera appearance earlier on.
It shouldn't surprise you, actually, that I hated Halloween as a child, and I hate it even more as an adult.
And look at the run Gordon Veo has been on from hand 108 to hand number 112.
Wow, it's even more impressive than the run he had at the end of day 7 when we were down to 2 tables, when he went skyrocketing up in just a half a dozen hands.
And they call Qui Win Tommy Gun for that reason, because he has the tendency to go on streaks as well. And Win still over 110 million in second place. 4 players still vying for that World Championship bracelet. And you can follow along. The chip stacks up top, the players who have been eliminated and their payouts also. The blind still at 500,000, 1 million for the big blind with 150K ante. Veo first to act here. And the chip leader with King Jack raises it up to 2.3 million.
He who has the bigger stack has the bigger military. That's kind of what it comes down to. That's how powerful chips are in a poker tournament.
Veo will raise and take it.
Veo and Ruan, they crack me up. They're both part of the new breed. They both have had one job essentially in their life. Veo, when he was a teenager, worked at a local grocery store. He walked down the aisles turning products around so labels faced the customer. Did not like that, quit after 3 weeks. Ruan, in college, worked in American Eagle Outfitters. He was folding clothes. He was told he was going to have to work on New Year's Eve. He said, I'm not going to work on New Year's Eve. He quit after 3 weeks. Both of them, one job each. After 3 weeks, they're gone. There's the American work ethic for you.
Ruan in the small blind. 9 tray, sunglasses in place.
Actually, the right thing for him, he ran out of clothes during the main event. He went to Walmart. He should have gone to American Eagle Outfitters here in Las Vegas to shop. He had the big paycheck from the tournament. That would have been the just thing for him to do after quitting after 3 weeks.
Ruan with a King 5 suited. Sorry, the cards were lagging just a little bit as they worked their way through the computer. And 8 tray for Veo. I think Veo's played that hand before and won with it.
Yeah, he should find a way to win with it here too, given that he has position on his opponent and the massive chip lead.
And so with the king in his hand, Ruan with the open ender. Ruan has the action.
Yeah, if I'm Ruan, I'm sitting here and my opponent check back the turn. What I don't, with the flop, what I don't want to do is have to check call the turn, so I'm probably more likely to just lead into him. I think that's the right play, because you want to call the turn anyway, right? You have an open-ended straight draw. King might be good.
Veo had a draw as well, but Ruan will take it with the bet, the short stack versus the big stack. So Ruan happy to be sticking around. He was happy. He said, I'm 5th out of 5 when the night started. He says, I'm good. I can play a little looser. I don't have to be so tight. These guys might have trouble with my stack if I shove. Tuesday night, as mentioned, a champion will be crowned on ESPN. We'll start at 9 p.m. Eastern. And in all likelihood, we'll have 3 players getting underway at that time and play down to a champion. The champion will earn $8 million. Josephy raises to 2.4 million, and everyone folds.
I was listening to Cliff Josephy talk to Bernard Lee on the Bernard Lee Poker Show, and it was very funny. He talked about he just turned 50 this year. And so he entered the World Series seniors event for the first time and figured since he's one of the youngest there, he had a huge advantage on the field. And now at the November 9, being the oldest one here, he believes he has a huge advantage on the field. So he's able to spin his age either way.
Cliff will be running for city council in Oyster Bay very soon, no doubt. His Steely Poker Pro exterior collapsed just briefly on day 7 when one of our producers talked to him and said, what would it mean for you to make the November 9? And it really caught Cliff by surprise, and he actually choked up a little bit and walked away. He says, I can't talk about that now, but you could see him just having that emotion rush over him. And it's what it does to you. You know, when you've been a giver, and suddenly you have a chance to be a big name in poker once again. And it does mean so much to these guys, aside from the money, aside from the bracelet.
Check.
So a straight draw for Josephy here. There's the board on the turn.
By the way, with his big advantage at that seniors event, I believe he got knocked out in the first 3 or 4 levels.
I bet he got it in good, though.
Bet 1.5.
A bet from Wynn, and Josephy will fold. And we win with a small pot. No real small pots anymore with the lines at $500,000 and $1 million.
There's a pretty big pay jump that's into effect here.
Absolutely.
The difference between 3rd and 4th is $876,000. And I know that Josephy is not playing to move up a spot, but certainly for some of the other players, it's a lot of money to consider.
Well, I believe the pay jump is bigger than any single payday of any of these players' careers. So just the pay jump. And we're looking at over $2.5 million for 4th place. That's why you got to love the main event.
Wasn't a good one.
Keep the card out.
Ruan will take that. Everybody folded to him. Ruan in the big blind with ace-jack, he showed. And at this point, action, as you're seeing, it speeds up. And if you're playing, you're seeing those blinds come around so rapidly. And as you know, Kara and Dan and Phil and all of us have talked about the speed of play here. It can be sometimes kind of head spinning how many chips you're spending in a short amount of time. And you have to get involved.
I mean, with the blinds at 500 and $1 million and each ante at 150K, every 4 hands is going to cost you 2.1 million. So it adds up. So you can't just sit back and wait for hands. This is when real poker skill comes into play, because it's what you steal that puts you ahead of the curve compared to the other players.
So having run deep in any type of event is going to aid you here, because you actively know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, experience matters.
Ruan, the small blind, limps in for 500,000 more with Queen 4. Veo with 5 deuce.
Right, and if I'm Veo in his seat with all his chips, I'm going to be hammering the small blind a lot when Ruan limps in. I don't want him to think that he's going to get away with this kind of limping. And so even with a hand like 5 deuce, once in a while I might put in a raise there just to kind of let him know that you're not going to be limping and seeing flops a lot.
Both players hit that flop. Ruan with top pair, middle pair for Veo. And they both check it.
So if I'm Veo, I probably make a small bet with my 5 here.
9 of clubs, inconsequential.
Wow, Ruan here with top pair, checks it twice. This is very tricky. He's trying to bait his opponent.
Does not get a bet from Veo, another 9.
So I think for sure he has to bet the river here for value, given his opponent checked twice on the river. And Veo will probably actually have to call, because the way he's played this hand, the line that he took, is just control the size of the pot, don't play big pot with second pair, and let's just try and win in a showdown. So if I was to guess, I would say that Ruan will probably bet for value, and Veo will probably pay him off.
1.5. And with that smaller pair, Veo does pay him off, and Ruan will collect that pot of $5.6 million, and that gets him very close to Cliff Josephy now. But Ruan still technically the short stack. So Gordon Vail gives up a few chips to his friend Michael Ruan, but he remains the chip leader. Still 4 players in contention for $8 million. Up inside the Penn and Teller Theater, let's check in with Tara Scott, who knows Qui Win is playing for more than just himself.
Qui Win is not just here for himself, he's also here to pay it forward. He says he loves his adopted country of America and he wants to give back by offering a percentage of his winnings to various charities. Now the main focus of his giving will be in honor of his brother Thomas. Thomas is here on the rail. Thomas served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 23 years. Qui will be giving to help wounded veterans returning from deployment as well as counseling for those whose marriages need help. He's also going to be giving to the Vietnamese communities both here in the United States as well as in Vietnam. He says that it's important to serve the communities that have served him.
And actually Thomas, Purple Heart decorated Marine, tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And we thank him for his service and thank him for being on Qui's rail all throughout the main event. Talked with him a couple of times as Qui was making his run through, and first thing I asked him was about the hat.
Hello.
Hard to ignore the hat, and Win will take that pot.
That's the best hand on I got.
Hold it to him in the big blind.
No action.
Do safe.
As you mentioned last night, it means a lot to have those folks on your shoulder all night long, right?
Emotional support goes a long way. I know that when I'm at a final table, I love when my friends and family are there. And so when you have people rooting for you, it just kind of brings up your overall emotional outlook on the table. And so I think that goes a long way.
If you had a rail at this main event, I think you would have finished higher than 449th. You had no one behind you. And actually, I watched you play some, and I thought you played well enough to finish, frankly, in the top 400.
Thanks, Norman. Are we even now?
I do remember you walking away and you were not happy.
Well, anytime you bust a main event, you are not happy.
Hey, the lucky hand of the night in the hands of Cliff Josephy once again.
Raised to
Pocket eights
3.5.
raised to $3.5 million. We win just called for $500,000 from the small blind in this blind on blind battle.
Wynn does not like to be pushed around, but he can't continue with King of Deuce here.
Cliff Josephy will take that pot. Hope you all are enjoying your Halloween. Thank you for spending some time with us. Send candy over to our studio if you happen to be walking by the Rio. Cliff's 3 sons too young to get inside our gaming environment here, but last night they were sending their virtual support to Dad by hanging out with their friends and watching all the action. Team backs with t-shirts coast to coast.
Yeah, Cliff with 3 boys. Actually, I'm surprised they weren't at Dave & Buster's, winning Liar's poker money from other teenagers. But instead, they supported Dad. That's the right thing to do.
His wife is here. Lisa, we've seen her. Also,
Raised to 2.3.
Phyllis and Dennis, his mom and dad, and his sister Gabby on his rail tonight. Vail raised to $2.3 million. Our chip leader with ace 10, Win with queen jack of hearts on the button.
At a minimum, Wynn will see a flop here. Queen Jack of Hearts on the button. It's a great hand. I like calling in these spots when I'm up against someone that has a lot of chips. I definitely want to take a flop and play the pot in position.
Josephy folded. He goes to talk to his rail about the hands that they have seen up to this point, and Ruan wants to come along in the big blind with queen 9. So Ruan not sitting pretty with those cards against those other 2 hands, and there is a 10 for Vail. He got in there with ace 10.
Check.
That's a fantastic flop for ace 10. This should definitely be a lead from Vail, and I think that should probably finish the hand. There's really not much reason for either of the other players to continue, as both have really missed the flop.
So the chip leader is 3-handed pot with top pair, top
That is
kicker.
2.8.
Check to him. Bets $2.8 million. Free win, I think, is done with this hand, as you mentioned, Antonio.
That is correct.
Up.
Mr. Lamicaron.
Not yet.
Well, sometimes you might want to consider putting in a small raise here in position, because you know that your opponent is opening and betting almost every flop. And so it's really difficult for him to continue if you do put in a raise with a hand like this. And if he happens to have something, you always have a queen or a jack to maybe get the best hand and
this.
runner hearts. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it.
Okay.
You don't think what?
I don't think he's going to raise or call, but I guess he is going to call, which I really don't like.
Well, now Wynn with the flush draw as the 4 of hearts peels off on the turn.
Well, isn't there a chance just calling there? He waits to see if Veo checks the turn and can take the pot away from him, because maybe Veo had nothing, as you said, and was just continuing.
Right. I mean, if you do think your opponent has nothing, you can float him. A float means call with nothing, just to try and take it away on the turn. Personally, if I'm going to float in that spot, I like to put in a little bit of a raise, just because it puts some pressure on my opponent. I don't want him to be able to fire again on the turn into me.
Plus, you might win the pot right there. With
Right,
the
you
raise.
might win the
That
pot
is
right there.
7.7.
But I think both are fine.
7.7 from Veo. And now, how much is a flush draw worth with 2 overcards for Qui Win?
So what's Veo representing, right? He was the first one in the pot. He opened for a raise. He bet the flop. He now bet the turn. He's trying to tell the story of maybe I have jacks, maybe I have queens.
Well, Wynn actually getting the right pot odds to call here. Wow. Here
Raising
he
it.
goes. The raise.
Raise is a very strong play because it's very difficult for Veo to call without a super premium hand. His hand, ace-10, is basically the same thing as having a pair of aces here, right? And so
Raise is 16.7 more.
that is a big raise.
0.7 million
20.
more.
So now Wynn is representing
24.4
pocket threes or pocket sevens. It's extremely unlikely he called with 5-6 on the flop for a gut shot. He has Veo has a 10 in his hand, so it's less probable that he has a pair of 10s, and also he didn't re-raise them pre-flop. So the only hand he's worried about is pocket threes, pocket sevens. Maybe he called with pocket fours and got really lucky on the turn. But if I'm sitting in Veo's seat, this looks a little bit suspicious to me.
He said nice hand and folds, and Qui Win muscles up on the chip leader and retakes the top spot.
Well done, Qui Win. Mentioned earlier, to Qui or not to Qui. Never underestimate your opponent. Never underestimate Qui Win.
Veo looks just a shade paler right now after that hand. He is in second place, solidly in second place with 117 million. But Qui Win on top now with almost 126 million. And his wife with a beautiful smile there in the rail.
I think Veo should have given that one a little bit more thought. It looked a little bit suspicious. Now, obviously, it's easy for me to say because I can see his cards. But really, the only hands that were beating him were those hands that we specifically spoke about. And ace-10 there is a pretty big hand. And so, I don't know.
And look at this. Qui right back in it. It just limps in with pocket nines.
Well, we did say he was unpredictable, limping in with pocket nines.
Psychologically, for Qui Win to be back on top, it's got to be huge for him and his confidence.
Right, and he just put a play on with queen high. Yeah.
Oh, look at this. It's finally a set for Qui Win.
When it rains, it pours chips. Qui Win now with his own mini rush.
Just limped in with the nines. Veo in the big blind.
Man, it looks like sets are going out of style at this final table.
The gut shot for Veo. And Qui Win's going to say 1.7 to stick around, and Veo does not. And Veo will be very interested in about 29 minutes to go check his rail and see what Qui Win won that last hand with. So what does that do to you feel psychologically from Veo's standpoint when he goes and learns the real news behind what happened in the previous hand?
Well, if I know that I laid down the best hand, it hurts. But we don't know what the river card was, and Win had a lot of outs. A queen, a jack, a heart. And so I wouldn't feel terrible about it. I think that Veo thinks that he's in a very good spot, and he doesn't want to risk losing some of his chips to Win, who is, you know, directly on his left.
Right.
He has control of the table. He's playing great.
So despite all that, Veo's still in second place, 116 million chips, and about 11 million behind. That's not a bad spot to be.
Definitely not a bad spot. So, you know, he's just thinking maybe that line was a little too thin for him to take. There's better spots to put his chips in.
Okay. Sometimes you fold the best hand. That happens.
It happens. You would not be a successful poker player if you never folded the best hand.
Josephy opened with a raise. The suited king. And he will win that pot. Pocket pair goes into the muck from the former chip leader Gordon Veo, and Cliff Josephy now with 52 million chips even. Still half the stack of second place Veo and a lot less than our chip leader Qui Nguyen, once again atop the in Las Vegas any night of the week, and you might think it's Halloween, but actually on Halloween it can get quite festive on the Strip and all around, and folks enjoying it. And look at that, we've been honored with our own pumpkins.
Wow. Antonio, I'm wondering, does the Antonio Pumpkinhead know how to lunge?
Like a very similar.
Oh, that's a low blow, even for you, Mr. Norman Chad.
No, you're a lunging specialist.
Google is your friend, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's not bring up a sore subject.
You still sore from that?
Good one.
Physically and mentally.
There's a 2.3.
Oh yeah, there was a lunge bet in back in the Bahamas a while ago, and we'll get on with it.
we'll leave it
Ruan with
right
the
there.
raise to 2.3
get back to
million
the poker.
with a suited queen. Veo on the button with king queen,
Call.
and he calls. Ace 9, and was that a snap fold?
That was.
Josephy, a
Sometimes,
nice fold from Qui. Ace Jack for Josephy.
you know, ace 9 in the small blind against two players you have to play out of position. It's not really the best spot, although it is four-handed. So
Give him credit. Give him credit. And there is a jack, top pair, top kicker for Cliff Josephy, and an 8 in there for Ruan.
Wow, this is
and
an
a
action flop.
Broadway draw for open-ended for Veo. Wow.
Bet is 4 million.
Josephy leads out 4 million. Now Ruan with bottom pair and his own gut shot.
You surprised that Josephy let out?
The flush draw as
yeah, I mean,
well.
I think if Josephy had just ace jack without the ace of diamonds, he probably wouldn't lead out, but he does have some runner outs. He definitely does not want to get raised here because it's a very tricky spot. The flop is not the best flop to play big pot with ace jack. So I am a little surprised by the lead. I think that most players would probably check call in this spot. But look, it's great to mix it up, right? The players don't put him on ace jack, I can assure you that.
Call.
He does not like two colors behind.
And another jack. And so now Josephy with the trips, but still there is danger lurking out there.
Right, but the danger's out there, but given that nobody raised the flop, he really likes his hand now because he's not really worried about somebody having pocket 10s or pocket 8s or two pair because they probably would have raised them on the flop. And so ace jack now is almost definitely the best hand here.
Bet 8 million.
Twice the bet. 8 million now.
This is kind of
with the flush draw.
it's a tough spot for Ruan, right? Because A, he has Veo behind him. He's the shortest stack, Ruan. His opponent has shown strength. He led into two people and now leading again into two people with no fear. And so if I have queen 8 of diamonds, I'm thinking to myself, is there a chance that if I hit my hand, maybe it's not good? Is there any kind of situation in which my 8 is actually good here? For instance, if the river comes a deuce of hearts, is there any way that I'm going to win this pot with jacks and 8s, right? Or do I have to get there, right? What if I make a straight, do I love my hand? If I make a flush, do I love my hand?
And the 9's no good for Ruan.
Right, you know, but he doesn't know that.
Right.
So this is one of those spots where I might consider folding a very strong hand. Two pair, straight draw, flush draw, and a straight flush draw if the 9 of diamonds peels off. But
Ruan with 36 million behind puts in a quarter of his stack. And Vail gets out of the way.
It's a pretty scary board to draw to.
And that is a clean river card for Cliff Josephy.
Right, so given that Ruan called an 8 million chip bet on the turn, it's more likely he has an actual hand, a made hand, versus a draw hand. And so I like this bet from Josephy because you're trying to induce your opponent to make a call.
Josephy with the shorter stack would have to commit his tournament life to this call.
Ruan folds here. He's left with 28 big blinds. So
when Ruan folds here, I don't think there's any version of him calling here. And that's the problem you run into when you call on the turn is if a blank peels off on the turn, is there any way I can win this hand in a showdown? And given Josephy's strong bet here, I highly doubt we're going to see an all-in for his tournament life here. A call.
Fourth place money over $2.5 million if he calls. Careful. Yeah. He does give it up, and Josephy will take it.
This card has a crease in it.
Josephy noticed imperfection in the card. They will take that one out of play without showing it, and Cliff Josephy and team backs over 73 million again. What a steady, solid player he is, and he just does not get out of line, playing his 12th straight main event. He's finally in the black for all those buy-ins, man.
And he said that the 100-day wait for this November 9 from July, it reminded him of 20 years ago. He had a huge stock then. He got everyone he knew involved in it, and that's all they ever talked about for the next 18 months. The same sort of thing when you're waiting here. The November 9 is the only thing anyone wants to talk to you about. Cliff was happy to be there. He's happy to talk about it, but he says, boy, it kind of wears you out after a while. It's your whole life.
So Ruan left with 28 million in fourth place. Josephy with 73.5 million in third place. Vail with over 109 million, and Wen still the chip leader with almost 126 million. But with these blinds and with the short table and the lack of requirements for a monster hand to get involved, things can change very quickly.
Four-handed Nolan will hold them deep in a tournament. It is fireworks at its best. Who needs the 4th of July when you have the main event?
Win on the button. Gives it up to Josephy in the small blind. He will call. Ruan in the big blind.
Check.
Checks his option. Top pair for Cliff Josephy.
Hard to flop a pair. Some guys are better at it than others.
The yellow mini frisbee. $1 million is the bet. Oversized chips, the yellow ones and the red ones. That is most of what we're seeing flying around here. The lavender's worth 100K, normal size chip, along with the green 25K chips still in play. I think we'll be getting rid of those pretty soon on the next level. And there's a raise.
Ruan has had enough. He wants to take a stand and try and make a move. Unfortunately, the last time he tried to make a move was when he called Win with the king-queen yesterday for 7 million on the flop with a gut shot, and that didn't work out too well.
No, that led to him becoming the short stack, and he is the short stack right now with very little wiggle room.
Unfortunately for him, his timing has not been very impeccable.
Ruan picked up a gutter, but it is Cliff with the top pair. You saw him looking suspiciously at Ruan before acting rather rapidly with 2 million more to call.
Check.
Check here just basically means that he's giving up the pot.
Third club out there. Nobody's much concerned about that.
Check.
But Ruan's raise did get Cliff to check.
Well, this is definitely a good card for Ruan to continue bluffing with. He raised them on the flop. Maybe he had a hand
Check.
that he was willing to get it in with.
And a check back. And Cliff says, come on, team back, spring it. Cliff has not been getting a lot of sleep. He admitted that just a couple of hours last night. He did not sleep much late in the main event. But so much adrenaline, so much to think about, so much to work for here.
I've actually seen him yawn twice at this table already tonight. But when you do get chips and the adrenaline gets running, you stop yawning.
I think he likes the cheers, the shouts in between. Maybe don't distract me. He said, I have work to do still.
I really enjoy watching people have fun at a poker tournament. That's what poker is all about. Let's sit around, let's gamble, let's play, but let's have fun at the same time. The game has gotten so serious these days that it's almost unbearable.
Folded to blind on blind. Michael Ruan already has a $500,000 in. He has 9-6. He has the short stack, 23 big blinds. He makes the call.
And he began today with 23 big blinds when we were 5-handed and the short stack. And now again, 23 big blinds, short stack when we're 4-handed.
Veo with a nice hand here in the big blind in this situation.
Veo needs to start hammering Ruan when he limps in the small blind. He's let him see a couple of flops so far, but at some point he's got to
Raise to 3.2.
set the tone that
How about now?
you're not going to. This would be the time. Well, King 8 suited has a lot more value than the other hands that he's been dealt in the last few times we got to this situation.
And he gets Ruan to fold. Ruan had committed $1 million only, but that does drop him down to 22 big blinds. So things are getting tighter for Michael Ruan with these other big stacks around him. Kui Win still the chip leader. Veo not far behind.
I'm not behind one. 200.
Gordon Veo from San Francisco. We had a November Nighter from San Francisco last year, and you wore a hat in last year's presentation as well.
Yes, he was a bit older than Gordon. Neil
Blumenfield, yep.
Blumenfield.